Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Deborah Rue, and this is Human Potential at Work. My guests that are on today are from IAAP, which is the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. And actually, they have been on the show before. I have Dr. Christopher Lee and Sam Evans, and they're going to update us on IAAP. And we're going to talk about, once again, and we've talked about this before, but I think it's worth repeating, why we need an association and we need to support the association to make sure that we are supporting accessibility professionals all over the world, but also that we're bringing new ones in and helping them grow and learn. But we're also going to be talking about two new certification programs they have, and they're also going to go ahead and let us know other certifications that they've already had. But I also am looking forward to talking to them a little bit about why corporations need to support IAAP and how they can do that to make sure, once again, everything's accessible. Very important that technology is accessible to all people. So Christopher and Sam, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Deborah. Always loving seeing you.
I agree. And we've known each other for so long. So Sam, let's start with you. Tell the audience who you are and a little bit about your background. She's got an impressive background, so she's doing good things for our community.
My name is Samantha Evans. I am the certification manager at IAAP. I have a background in marketing communications and nonprofit and association management. So I spent my education in marketing communication and spent 20 years working with associations and nonprofits, building membership value propositions, marketing communications, messaging, and through my own credentialing processes, became familiar with certification and was lucky enough about 5 years ago to join IAAP to help build, grow, and develop our certification program. So I am lucky to spend my time supporting good work and efforts by practitioners and professionals around the world who make the world a better place.
Yeah, you're adding a lot of value. And Dr. Christopher Lee, tell us a little bit about your background. You have a very impressive background.
I appreciate that, Deborah. I've been in the field of, I guess you can say, disabilities all my life. I mean, I was really started in college when I spoke on panels with other students about disabilities and specifically around dyslexia and learning disabilities. So from that launched my career, I guess you could say, in the field of disabilities, and primarily around psychology and assistive technology was kind of my main interest. One of the challenging things I dealt with when I was in school early on was that all the textbooks were not in accessible format. So from that, I founded a program that was really something that was quite new, innovative in the U.S., and that was to develop a kind of production site for textbooks to ensure that they were accessible, as well as the assistive technology and the training for students in higher education. And so when I went back to get my graduate work, I realized that the books weren't accessible. So we started a program, and Sam worked with me on this program. It started at University of Georgia and then went to Georgia Tech. And so academia has been in my blood for several years. And now I'm working with G3 ICT as the Chief Learning Officer. And a good chunk of my time is spent running the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, which has been around about 6 years now.
Yep.
And right. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, and since you mentioned G3ICT, and we've actually featured Excel Dubois from G3ICT multiple times on the show, but do you just mind telling the audience a little bit more about who G3ICT is?
Yeah, G3ICT has been around since 2006, and it was formed really because of the CRPD, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and it came out of that Human Rights Treaty. So G3ICT works on policy. They do a lot globally around collecting data in regards to digital accessibility. They have an annual conference. This year was virtual, Enabling Summit. They have an advocacy group tied to it, and we have a division that deals with smart cities for all. So that's the core. I'm not getting too in depth with G3ICT of the work that they do, and IWP is a division of that organization.
Yeah, G3ICT, the advocacy that they've done, they almost single-handedly, with, of course, the community behind them, um, encouraged countries all over the world to sign and ratify the convention. And now
Exactly.
most countries have signed it, including the United States, yay,
Yeah.
and have ratified it. Not the US, sadly. I'm looking forward at some point. Political leaders will make that a priority. The reason why we chose not to do it as a country was because we had the Americans with Disabilities Act that we just celebrated our 30-year anniversary. But the the good thing of there's so many good things about the ADA, but when we leave our borders, we're not protected. And so it's very important that the United States show global leadership and ratify that CRPD.
Yep.
But I
CRPD.
have, yeah, I've always been very grateful to the G3ICT team for showing so much leadership with that. And it might sound like that's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. Having any country sign and ratify a treaty with UN, almost a convention, is a really big deal. So I applaud them for those efforts. So I just wanted to point that out. But so I know, Christopher, when you first took over IAAP, you came on air and you talked a little bit about where IAAP was, but that has been at least a year and a half. Time is so weird these days with this COVID going on. It might have been longer than that, but give us an update. And assuming people haven't seen that episode, we'll make sure that we tag episodes that you and Sam have been in the past, and also that G3ICT has done, just so people can follow them. But tell us what IAAP is and where you're going and where you hope to go.
Well, so we're somewhat broad in a sense. We focus, and Sam's going to talk a little bit this later. We focus mostly on digital accessibility, ICT, and that has been kind of our core. And IWP started, not to get too down into the weeds, started 6 years ago with groups that were very interested in ensuring they could find individuals that they could hire that had accessibility knowledge, and it just wasn't out there. And so if it was, they couldn't find them. So IWP was formed by private industry. It was formed by nonprofit organizations and disability advocacy groups. So it was really a holistic approach coming at this. And when I came on board a year and a half ago, there was a lot of projects that were bubbling, and we had volunteers out there that were really giving back to this organization. And that's really what this organization is all about. It's about volunteering. It's about the professional community. It's about building awareness around accessibility and having a network out there to support each other. That's IAAP's core. We do it in certification, we do it in networking, and we do it in professional education. Those three things that we do. So over the last year and a half, we've been building those out. We had some really good core things going on with certification, professional education, networking, but we've been deepening those and adding value to those benefits, each one of them. And that has been really what my focus on, as well as listening to the accessibility community and others right there to feed us, to know what we need to do in order to build out these benefits. So we've been doing that. We've just finished up a 3-year strategic plan. I know that sounds boring, but it's very important. And we're tying that to a marketing plan, which obviously you will be helping us out on, hopefully implementing that. So we're doing a lot of infrastructure stuff that really supports that. And a big piece of that is listening to individuals with disabilities, as well as the people that support them and the community as a whole. So we've launched several new initiatives. We have a strategic leadership and accessibility initiative right now. We've got 2 certifications that are popping out right now, just in the last year and a half, that Sam will talk about. We are bringing on an educational learning platform and tying that to some of our certification, professional education. So there's a lot happening right now that we're pretty excited about. And I think the key is for us is that there's so much out there, is choosing where to go with it. And I think that's something that we have to be really focused on. So that strategic plan that I just talked about is crucial. We are international, and that's what it says in our name. So we have chapters throughout the globe, and we're building that and understanding how people with disabilities and the people that support them and are different than just the U.S. and different regions like that. So that has been a huge learning environment for me over the last year and a half. And I've been counting on experts to feed me that type of information. And so we're really going down that path right now to make sure that these regions throughout the globe have the resources that they need, that that we really are listening to them, make sure that the benefits fit them. So that's a big piece of what we've been doing for the last year and a half.
Yeah, and one thing that I really liked when you took over the leadership was that you really took that I and IAAP seriously, because criticism we had heard in the past was that it was only US. It's all about the US's. And so I know that you have been very deliberate in making sure that you're going and your entire team is involved in this from an international perspective. And you have multiple, and I don't know, chapters. International chapters. Do you mind just talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, we have a agreement with different lead organizations within different countries that we work with. We have a Latin American chapter. We have a UK chapter. We have a Nordic chapter. We just brought on a Germany chapter, and we have one in India right now. All very different regions, and all approach accessibility very differently. So it's been very fascinating. We do quarterly chapter meetings, network meetings. So all the chapter leads come together, and they're from diverse organizations. You have accessibility companies, you have private industry, you have nonprofits. So they come from it from a different standpoint too, which is awesome because you're able to see how they think and how they kind of process things. And they talk in these meetings about, how's it working with region and how to reach individuals. And so we're learning a lot from that, and then feeding that back into our work and what we're doing, and hopefully pushing out.
Yeah, and one more question, and then we're going to bring in the lovely Sam. But I know that I was involved along with other leaders in really championing creating an IAAP. And the reason why I thought was so important was because the corporations had begun to really complain about the sort of what became buyer beware, which is still, a problem. But one thing that I really felt why we needed IAAP, a certification program and an association that belonged to accessibility professionals, was because people just they still are confused. Corporations were getting confused. They have vendors saying, oh, all you have to do is do this one little thing and boom, you're magically accessible. And they were believing it. Still they're believing it, and then they're getting sued. And so there was a lot of, and that happens in a growing industry, but I really believed, as did a lot of corporate brands that stood up to support IAAP, that we needed some consistency here. And so I know that corporations are still involved, but I'd like to see corporations get a lot more involved in supporting our programs and supporting our certifications and supporting little things like, if you're a CIO of a major corporation, you should be asking the people that you hire or the people that work for you to become certified in accessibility, just like they become certified in Microsoft and Cisco. I mean, this is a profession that the COVID-19 has shown us how important accessibility is. We've been saying it for years. Surprise, we need accessibility. So I'm hoping more corporations are going to step up and get more engaged. And I know you're, you are supporting other initiatives and really promoting programs like the Valuable 500, making sure that, you're supporting what they're doing. The CEOs need to be in this. So they're showing a lot of advocacy and leadership, which is one reason why I support what they're doing too. But let me send this to you, Sam. So why is certification so important to us? Before you even dig into the certifications you want to talk about, why should we care about certifications?
So in every profession and in every industry, there is a pride in establishing that we share a set of knowledge and skills and expertise, and we come from the same point of understanding and advocacy to promote what we as a group. So people are familiar. When you hire someone, you want to know that they're a valid member of that group. So certifications are a great way to establish not only your personal commitment, but for the industry, if it's technical, and the profession, to identify the core baselines and technical specialty areas that people have agreed on in a collaborative fashion. So the same way we accept standards, those are always adopted by community conversations and agreements. Certifications are built by community agreement and consensus build. So it is a tie to the community, and it's a great way to establish everyone knows these things as a baseline. We build and expand from there. So it's a personal commitment, it's a community commitment, it's engagement, and it's acknowledgement about what we collectively do together.
Well said, Sam. That was really good. Great answer. So tell us about the new, not only the new certifications, will you also talk about, because you have more than one certification. So do you mind, before you do the new ones, tell us the existing ones and why they're important? Why are they important for individuals, accessibility professionals, but why is it important for corporations as well as other organizations? Why do we care? And then think about it from the cultural perspective too, not just about the US.
So our certifications are international in scope. So they're not focused on a particular country, which may befuddle some people in the US that they need to learn about laws and regulations around the world, but that's intentional and by design. So we have a core competencies, the certified professional in accessibility core competencies. That's our broad foundation about accessibility. So this is good for everyone. It's good for people in every role, in every department, in every team to have a base understanding of disabilities, assistive and adaptive technologies, how we utilize tools to get around the barriers the world presents. How universal design as a concept can be implemented across any project and concept, and how that lends to inclusive design, and some web accessibility so that people understand the digital components of the world and how people are impacted by the standards that we work with from W3C and WCAG 2.1 now. Then the third part of CPAC is understanding rules and regulations around the world and some domain specific laws and regulations around the world that are specific to procurement, obtaining contracts and terms, as well as in specific areas about communications, and how you implement accessibility and inclusion into your organization from workflow to larger organization policy so that you can bake accessibility in as who you are as a cultural group and your ethos as an organization. So that's CPAC, and that's our core. And we really feel that's a strong commitment to accessibility as a profession, but it's also a great way for organizations to highlight we have invested in our people, our teams, and as part of our DEI, our diversity, equity, and inclusion statement that talks about people of all abilities, we are teaching and learning that information in as who we are. So that's our CPAC program, and that one is great for everyone. It helps in decision-making, thought processes, and planning. So web accessibility specialist was our second credential, our second certification, and it's a technical intermediate level skill for people that work in web accessibility, digital technologies. It is actually designed for somebody with 3 to 5 years of hands-on experience, not necessarily writing code, but understanding the core elements, having good understanding of HTML semantics, the baseline, understanding how JavaScript can play in and support the work, actually doing usability and accessibility testing across operating systems, device modes, different modalities, and different browsers, and use different types of assistive technologies so that it's not just I learned one methodology of testing with one product, but having cross-platform and cross-technology testing and usability understanding, and having a good grasp on ARIA, roles and labels. So it's more technical in nature, and you have to be able to identify these things in the wild versus looking them up. So it is experiential knowledge, but it also talks about core accessibility best practices and how you evaluate auditing and remediation. What do you tackle first? What's your priorities? So it's really a nice intermediate technical skill set. So
right, and before you go on to the next one, let's just talk a little bit about the web accessibility a little bit more, because I know one vendor in the United States that feels that he has created his website so accessible that you don't need assistive technology.
yeah.
And so I keep saying to this individual, but people that use assistive technology use it when they first start their computer and they navigate to the web. So a lot of times when people think about accessibility, they're only thinking about it from the web and not from digital inclusion.
Right.
And I was just wondering if your certification is addressing some of that, because there's misinformation out there.
There is misinformation. The reality is that people use assistive technology, low tech, high tech, and mid tech, to engage with the world around them. So they start their day with that technology of their choice. And so the reality is that we need to be designing for meeting the people where they are, how they use technology, and of their own preference. It is not up to us to decide or dictate how things work. And so if you are working towards inclusion and accessibility on the whole, you are going to meet the users depending on their products and services they choose. We all pick up a smart device, or it's near us, or it's tethered to, to our assistive mobility technologies, and we use what we want or what we have access to. And so our 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 web accessibility and CPAC both address cross-platform, cross-tools, and realistically, if we want to adhere to the social norms of being inclusive and open for everyone, we need to realize that people do use tech and design so that they can use their preferred technology, whatever that is, and understanding that technologies use navigation platforms. There are technology stacks that everyone uses. They may be proprietary in nature, but that's why we test and build for all. So does that, is that a,
It was an excellent answer, I thought.
so if somebody gets both our core competencies, CPAC and web accessibility, so if they have a good baseline in accessibility and have some technical skills and have earned that, we grant them a third credential, the certified professional in web accessibility. And so it's a nice stack of skills to be able to highlight. I have a good understanding of both universal design and accessibility and disabilities and business and technical skills. So that's a really nice set of, it's a nice suite for people to bring to the table, to their organization. And it's really great when we see companies highlighting that as the value add they bring to the world, to their customers, and to prospects. It's a way that companies are able to highlight their commitment to actually roll in the walk. We actually do the work, and it's built into who we are. So
are companies doing that, Sam? Are you seeing companies advertise when they're advertising for accessibility professionals or consultants tying into this? I hope we're seeing that.
We do. And what's really interesting, I get a lot of inquiries as people that have put out calls for proposals or requests for tender, and they want to be sure that the people that have responded saying they have these skills hold our credentials, and they want to know how to specify in their business request. But I really like seeing in portfolios online of companies where they are highlighting it. Here's our team. Everyone has an About Us page. But what's really interesting is watching companies distinguish themselves from everyone else in the market that says, I can write code, I can build a site, I can make your app work, for them to highlight and specify all of our team, or these members of our team hold these credentials. Because we know people put the postnomials on their profiles on LinkedIn and other places, but companies have to have a way to actually prove that their companies are doing this and their teams are invested. And so I see it more often. We're also seeing it as a preferred qualification listing on job descriptions, but I'm also seeing it being integrated into job roles. And as we look at maturity models for organizations, you build those skills and requirements into job roles and descriptions so that no matter who's in that role, that stays integral to your work and your workflow and your processes. So it's, for a young profession for accessibility, it's good to see that in this short time, relatively speaking, that we're seeing this distinguishing value proposition of our credentials being offered a benefit to the person and to the company.
And society.
Yes, well, ultimately it benefits everyone, because that means, hey, you know what? I want to do business with companies I believe in, that support my beliefs and what's important to me. And we know that you can go to a website in less than 10 seconds, determine if you can use it with your assistive technology or not. Or if a company doesn't caption their videos, then I'm pretty done pretty quick. So seeing that inclusion and that commitment really speaks to a social commitment to do better and be better, a better part of our community and the world. So um, consumers and people in general are learning, and they're putting their power of the purse and their commitment and engagement with companies that support who they are and to support them. So
Yeah, exciting. Okay, so tell us about the new certifications.
so Christopher mentioned that IAAP was built in the ICT digital accessibility realm when it was first envisioned as a community organization. But we have been really lucky to have team members from a Canadian group join us that had a built environment program, physical space and the built environment, which is where a lot of people first learned about accessibility. They're familiar with parking access and doors and buildings. So we have been working for about a year and have just launched the pilot program for the Certified Professional in Accessible Built Environments. So this is a great way to standardize knowledge at different tiers, because there's 3 levels for this program: introductory, intermediate, and expert. And so this is about built environment, from design, architecture, to consulting, to analysis and auditing spaces. So from the drafting board all the way through to implementation of facilities, and to ensuring that audits are performed for spaces that are accessible and inclusive and actually usable. So the built environment programs really offer somebody who's beginning on that path, who has maybe familiarity with types of space like day centers or rehabilitation centers or nursing homes that are specifically designed for accessibility for various types of physical needs, then expanding their work into the associate level and intermediate to having experience with at least 4 other types of spaces in a portfolio where they can exhibit their actual work experience in consultation and advice. And then the senior level is for people with at least 6 different component areas of accessible space design and built environment. But it's all based on ISO, the international standards that are applicable around the world, that have been adopted everywhere. But our second and third tier allow people to express their knowledge for their localized regional building codes and regulations, because that's where the regulations come into play in doing the work in physical space. And so states, cities, local municipalities, regions, and countries have unique building codes. And as people progress through that built environment program, they get to express that knowledge and background. So it really is experiential, demonstrated work.
And it's so important, because if we don't have physical accessibility, then we fail. If we don't have digital, and the two go together. So, we have smart buildings. We talked about, Christopher mentioned smart cities that G3ICT is doing. And I mean, if you're going to
All
be
changing. Yeah, it's all
smart,
smart.
right? We have
You got to put them together.
right. You got to put them together. So that's wonderful news.
So the built environment program, we're in a pilot launch right now. So people that are well positioned, that are already engaged and active in accessible built environments are invited to join us to participate in our pilot program. So it's a pilot program for level 1 and level 2 exams. And that is going to help us shape with our thought leaders and subject matter experts around the world to ensure that our program is valid and really reflects the real world experience that people need to have at these levels. So the Certified Professional in Accessible Built Environments is our newest program. We're really excited. And if you're interested in learning more, we'll be happy to talk with you. The pilot's going to run through October 31st. And then we'll launch the full programs later this year. And we'll probably see our first full set of courses, first full set of certification programs come online in January. But I know we've got at least 50 people that are set for each pilot. So we're excited to see built environment accompany digital accessibility.
And I think, Sam, just to say that, I mean, we still have spots too.
Yeah.
So if you're
Oh,
interested,
do you? I was wondering that, because I know Rich on my team, I mean, that he's an expert in that, so he should get involved.
He should get involved. He needs to be part of the pilot.
Yeah, because this is what he's done for years. So that's very cool.
And part of our invitation for people who are helping us shape things in the pilot is that the exams are offered at a 50% discount off of the regular rate. and people earn the full credential, and their feedback will really be essential in shaping the future of the programs.
Yeah,
And if you're
that's
from
very
a
exciting.
and if you're from a developing country, the it's free. So we have scholarship money for individuals from developing countries.
Yep. So
That's
that's
wonderful.
really exciting on the
That's
built
really
environment
important.
side of things. So
Okay.
what's next beyond built environment is accessible documents. So everyone has documents. We create them for ourselves, for our groups, our organizations. And while the web is beautiful and HTML is a great way to display content, we do create documents. So we have an accessible document specialist program, which is an intermediate technical program for people who create, remediate, and then process and establish workflows and procedures in organizations, from word processors to spreadsheets to presentations to desktop publishing. So the accessible document specialist, everyone has someone in their organization that creates documents, whether for their own use or for their customers or for the public. So we've had such great participation from industry leaders and subject matter experts that we're really proud to have a program that will illustrate not novice, but intermediate. Somebody with the accessible document specialist credential will be able to be a strong leader, trainer, and help organizations build accessible document practices into their workflow so that everything they produce can be used by everyone.
And so, Sam, when you say documents, because I know there's sometimes confusion, you are also talking about PDFs.
So, right. So that would be a final format option. So we aren't specific to a platform. So
Okay.
word processing could be whether you're on Google Docs or Microsoft or Apple products. So
Or
word processing, spreadsheets, no matter which your format, and slide presentations, as well as um, publishing things that might have been published for print in high gloss color paper format, but desktop publishing is a different format, and final format. So PDF is one, but final format could also be any of those others as they're shared out. So not unique to PDF, but PDF is certainly something to know. PDF UA standards, the Matterhorn protocol, PAC3 is a test product. So all of those pieces are part of what we expect somebody to call themselves a accessible document specialist to have in hand and have as rote memory.
right. And I often see that people forget that part of it. They'll make their HTML code accessible, but they forget to make the PDFs. They forget to caption the videos. So congratulations on these new certifications. How many people have been certified to date? And I don't know if you want to do it per certification or overall, but you've got some good numbers.
We do. We are just a little over 2,000 people with CPAC. We're at just under 1,000 for WAS, and at about 700 people that hold both CPAC, WAS to have that CPWA credential. We are on our first year of renewals for CPAC. We have more than 80% of the people who first earned CPAC have maintained with their professional development their CPAC credential, or gone ahead and added WAS to their credential and are continuing on their accessibility journey as a professional. So we're really excited. We're seeing really big growth, which is exciting because more so because it reflects the investment by individuals and organizations to make the world a better place. We're pleased to be able to offer a benchmark and a standard for that, but we're seeing growth, especially with COVID. We were really concerned what was going to happen in 2020, but we've seen that renewed interest and the demand for understanding accessibility help these programs continue to grow.
Yeah, I mean, quarter two was a little challenging, but quarter one was excellent. Quarter three was excellent. Quarter two was
as we were figuring it out, right? As we were figuring it out, but people thought, well, wait a minute, if I'm home and I'm doing this, why not get more credentials? So I think it made sense. I know that we're almost out of time, but I have one more question. But before I want to make sure that you tell the audience how to find IAAP first. And I know you're on social media and you're always encouraging corporations and individuals to there's so many things that you can do to get involved in IAAP, which is the way it should be, right? This is an accessibility professional association for all of us. So tell people how to find out more about IAAP. And if we have time, I'll ask my last question.
So the website obviously is our primary vehicle, and that's accessibilityassociation.org. So that's accessibilityassociation.org.
Accessibilityassociation.org. Okay.
Yeah, that's our primary. And as I mentioned earlier, and Sam mentioned it, we have a variety of areas that you can volunteer, because it's about volunteering. It's about getting involved in the community, right? And so we've got a committee that focuses on vetting all webinars. So we just don't throw out these webinars for professional educations. They're vetted. We also have an educational training resources that host our speakers bureau, and it's free to anybody. You don't have to be a member for IAAP. And they vet, this particular committee vets those resources to make sure that they're accessible, that they're up to date, and so on. Sam has a certification committee, as well as other committees that help with building out, what is needed, the educational aspect of the certifications. We have a marketing committee that we're involved in. So there's lots of areas. Some of the initiatives that we've got going on, like I mentioned earlier, the strategic leadership and accessibility. There's a task force tied to that. We have a benchmarking tool that we're building out. There's kind of is tied to a maturity model. There's a committee tied to that. So we have a group of volunteers that are committed to accessibility, that just have this incredible depth and knowledge in these areas that I just threw out. So there's lots of ways to get involved. And if you're swamped and too busy to get involved in volunteering, you can participate with our online connection platform, which is a member connection platform where you can ask questions and get answers back, and you can be a part of that whole reciprocity aspect of it. So it's a great way to show that you're out there as an accessibility professional and learn from others. And so that's the primary areas.
Right. And they're also on social media. I know that Sam and Christopher are both on LinkedIn, and they're on IAAP's
YouTube,
Twitter, Facebook,
Twitter.
YouTube, on all the major areas. So, and you can find the links to their social media. We'll also put them in. But you can, go to the website and
it will give you everything. One other thing though, Deborah, we do have a newsletter that comes out once a month, and that's free to anybody. You go to the website, and you just log in and say I want to be sign up for the newsletter. You'll get a monthly newsletter with a combination of all kinds of really good articles that we pull together each month regarding accessibility and built environment. And then you also get a weekly update on specific things that may be going on that we didn't catch in the newsletter, or that we want to strip out of the newsletter to really highlight what we've got going on, or what somebody else in other organizations going on. So it's really good information. It's a lot of information, but it's important information that we pull from around the globe.
Yeah, accessibility, we've seen more than ever before during COVID how important this is. And, we use the word accessibility, but, we're talking about digital inclusion. We're talking about true inclusion when we're talking about the built environments. You can't have a smart city if it's not inclusive. Exactly. It just doesn't make sense. So I think the work that IAAP is doing is just very important. I'm sorry, Christopher, go ahead.
Well, I keep up wanting to pull in. We also, this comes back to a point that you brought in at the very beginning, and that's really looking at getting corporations more involved with IAAP. And we started off with corporations, and we still are growing in our corporation membership. But the challenge with that a lot of times is, and this better than anybody, is the sector or the industry that you're talking to, right? They're very different. You got tourism, which is very different than health or insurance, so that's been something that we've been really focusing on, is drilling down and putting packages together for these different sectors, whether it's a financial package or whether it's healthcare or insurance, and putting together webinar packages, community practices, and building those up for these different sectors and
helping those people find each other in the community, so that they can find their colleagues that are having the same experiences and challenges and regulations, and introducing them to one another in connection, so that they can find their colleagues and their shared interest.
Support each other.
And everyone's welcome. Once again, Christopher mentioned that if you can't afford to take the test, and sometimes you can't, there's grants, there's all kind of ways that people can get involved, and corporations need to get more involved. We're seeing some leadership with corporations, but I personally would like to see a lot more leadership coming from corporations supporting our industry, because this is how you can't include people with disabilities really, or people that are aging into disabilities, or people that might speak a different language if you're not accessible. That's why we must support IAAP, which is why I have from the very beginning. So that's, I congratulate you both on everything you're doing. It's very impressive. I know that we're out of time, but the question I was going to ask is, I have investors coming to me a lot. They're coming to me and they're asking me, who can they buy in the accessibility field? And I actually have said to them, well, you actually haven't really added that much value. The investor money that have come into our industry, it's actually sort of hurt us so far, because they're so interested in making money, they forget that this is something that we need to do to improve society. So I would like to say to investors, if you want to learn more about accessibility or understand who to pick or both, you should be talking to IAAP. They're dealing with the experts. They're dealing with people all over the world. They can tell you. They're the ones you should be coming to, not to me. I mean, you can come to me. I'm happy to talk to you, but you should be talking to the IAAP, and we should all be supporting it. So I thank you.
Deborah, that's a good point. I know we're out of time, but IWP, I mean, our core of our membership is accessibility vendors and consultants, and I mean, we learn from them every day, and they're transparent in a sense, because they're trying to actually give back to the community their own way. So right. It's quite amazing, and the hours and hours that some of these individuals have put into, these companies have put into accessibility. I know you have.
Oh my God.
And it says a lot. It speaks volumes to these organizations. So,
and one of the things that you'll find is an earmark of a good association or professional society is that mission is first, and then members, and then money comes later. And so for investors, if they really want to understand, then let us help them understand what the mission is for accessibility professionals and practitioners, and then what our member interest is. And we have that information for members around the world. So we're happy to field questions and help guide.
And take your money and put it in IAAP and help IAAP get even bigger and more robust. It's like, come on, you want to make a difference with your money, investors? Then protect our associations, protect what we're trying to build here to make sure that we have, it's sort of a balancing of it. So I really encourage investors to get more involved and support it. Also corporations, individuals, vendors. This is our association. We need to make sure it's successful by contributing to it. So thank you, Sam. Thank you, Christopher. I'm so grateful for the work you are doing. I appreciate G3ICT being behind it. And I hope you're going to come back on again in 6 months and tell us what else you're doing.
Always. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Bye.